Welcome to the Financial Freedom Mastermind Group podcast. Here we're all about breaking free from the 40 to 50-year word ride and accelerating our journey towards financial freedom. Join us every Wednesday at 7 p.m. Eastern as we explore different types of investments that can fast-track your path to financial independence. We serve as a hub for connecting with fellow members during our sessions so you can share successes, ask questions, and keep the momentum going.
Hey everyone, this is Niyi Adewole, host of the Akaba Home Financial Freedom Mastermind Group, and I'm excited to be joining you here on Wednesday, midway through the month of April. We are literally just flying through the year. I hope that you guys have been achieving your goals and continue to take action each day. I can tell you that we have, and most of the people within the Akaba Home Network have been doing so as well. I'm going to be joined tonight by my co-host, Liban Ismael, and he has a topic that we're going to be diving into for the initial part of this. It's going to be geared around long-term rentals. I'm going to let Liban intro that. But again, this is an open session, and after we do that, we're opening up to the rest of the group. Liban, how you doing?
I'm doing well. Thank you for asking. And yeah, no, today the topic we're going to be covering is kind of a list we have, the 19 most common mistakes of being a landlord. And I'm sure Niyi might have a little more to add on aside from the 19, but we'll kind of go through the ones we have listed. And I mean, we're not going to really waste any more of your time. We're going to get straight into it here. The first, not fully checking the credit, income, and rental history of prospective residents. I mean, I think this is by far the most common mistake people make, is kind of just going by word of mouth, trusting what someone tells you, but you really got to verify everything, right?
Agreed. And this is one that early on, I definitely did make this mistake. All right, one of my first rentals was, that triplex that I lived in. And I was still new to the game. I was just listening to Bigger Pockets. I was so excited of the fact that people wanted to pay me money that, the first initial couples that came through, they would just tell me, hey, we fell on hard times, but, we're good for it. We'll pay you X amount up front and things of that nature. And if somebody's guaranteeing 6 months up front on a long-term rental, there's probably something in that background that does not vibe, right?
Yeah.
And so one of those instances actually led to that person giving a lump sum up front and then not paying anything else. And it took like 2 months to get them evicted because they kept making promises and we didn't send the eviction letter and things of that nature.
Yeah.
So highly recommend exactly what you said. You need to have a defined screening process, which we have now. And I'm happy to share with anybody that needs something like that for their long-term rentals. But it's very simple, right? We have our screening process and we take everybody through that, regardless if we know them or not. And we treat our business like a business.
100%. And so now the second one here, renting to a friend or relative or the relative of a friend. Why would it kind of not be a good idea to rent out to family, friends of family?
It's similar to when people say you should not do business with family, right? Or you should not do, things of that nature with a friend, because it can ruin the relationship, right? It really can. And so what I try to do is I'm not opposed to renting to family or friends or to doing business with family or friends, but you've got to make sure that you document everything up front and that everybody is fully clear up front and it's written down, right? Because if you don't, it can lead to some issues down the road because they're going to think like, hey, I should be getting a discount, or, hey, I'm going through hard times. You should just help me out. But at the end of the day, that bank that you have the mortgage with is not going to listen to you when you come to them and tell them, hey, listen, it's all good. Just, my family's a little bit late. Can you just give me some time? They're not going to hear any of that. And so you got to make sure that you're treating all of this like a business. It comes back to that first tip. And if you're doing that, and you're going to have those conversations up front with family, with friends, and you're going to be good to go. Now, if you don't do that and you're like, hey, I'm just going to help somebody out, I promise you can go sideways quickly. Even if that person's fully qualified and everything, you just want to make sure that you get it down on paper and that you review it. Take even more time to walk through all the documents together and say like, hey, this is what I expect. If you're late, I have to charge this percent because the bank is going to do this to me. And that's what we're signing. Like, are you good with that? And kind of make it happen from there.
No, 100%. 100%. Can you hear me?
Okay, we can hear you.
Yeah. Okay. Awesome. Yeah. No. So what I was saying was, to kind of tie into that point, that kind of ties into number 3, not getting everything in writing and signed by both parties. like how it should be.
Absolutely. Agreed. And I think this goes not even just for tenants, but just business in general, right? Like right now, we're working on a creative deal. And this is one that we'll talk about our next team meeting if we're able to put this together. It's actually pretty incredible. But somebody that we've been able to help purchase a couple short-term rentals out in the Blue area is now going after a larger deal. They need some private funding. And so we've paired them with somebody else within the Akaba Home Network, right? Just creatively working. And we believe it's going to be a deal. We actually are meeting with everybody and bringing everybody together tomorrow. We've already talked through all the terms. Everybody's agreed separately. Now we're going to bring the two parties together to see if we can make it happen. But long story short, we're going to put all this in writing, right? We're going to make sure, hey, there's an email that goes out. Is everybody good with this? Does everybody understand exactly what's going to go into this piece? And that's what you should do with your tenants. Make sure it's in writing. Make sure that you have everything signed. And then you're not the bad guy. The bad guy's the lease, right? You can say, hey, this is what we looked at. This is what we signed. I'm sorry, but we have to adhere to this. Otherwise, we can get in trouble.
No, 100%, 100%. Yeah, I think it's very important. Even to kind of share a story briefly that I had, we were trying to get a tenant to be removed from a property. And, they were like, hey, why don't we just pay him to leave? And I said, yes, but, we should get it in writing. And writing could even be something as simple as an email between you two guys going back and forth saying, hey, I'm going to give you X amount of funds to move out by X date. And then them being the prospective tenant agrees by saying, hey, yeah, I agree to the terms above. That way you at least have a paper trail. So kind of just creating that paper trail is more so the most important part. So number 4 here, and it kind of goes into the point we were saying earlier, not emphasizing at the beginning of the term and annually the absolute necessity of paying rent on time, with no excuses being, hey, and to your point now, you're not really arguing with them anymore. It's you versus the lease.
Agreed. And I missed the beginning of that. Could you say that one more time?
Yeah. It's not emphasizing at the beginning of the term and annually, so whatever you're going to renew, the absolute necessity of paying rent on time.
And Liban, you're cutting in and out, but I believe just restating it that it's not emphasizing the importance of rent being paid on time.
Correct.
Within that lease. And so one of the things that we actually did after my first couple of experiences with tenants is we started having something called a rent talk. And that's something that we talked about a long time ago. I want to say when we first started this mastermind group. And long story short, what a rent talk is, it's a PowerPoint presentation. Not many landlords are doing this, but I would literally take somebody through the whole application process, right? And make sure they're good. And then before we signed the agreement, I would set up time with them via Zoom or in person when I actually lived in Louisville. And we go through something called the rent talk. And it's basically walking them through exactly what our expectation is, exactly what we're doing for them. And I'm happy to share that, with the group again at a later date. But it's like multiple slides and it lays out exactly what we expect. And hey, if you're late, it's going to be X%. And then we also lay out incentives, right? In that rent talk, I built something in the back of it called like the Triple Star program or something of that nature. And basically, if they were with us for 1 year and didn't have any major violations or any payments missed, then on the renewal, which we're going to take rent up, we always clarified, hey, rent's going to go up X%. We usually do about 3%. So we'd let them know up front. But we would give them 25% off the first month's rent on the renewal, right? So if they renewed with us, they already know, like, hey, you've been good with us. And then on the second year, 24 months, if they renewed again, 50% off. And if they renewed again, 36 months or longer, they get the first month off. And so this was a win-win for both sides because they had an expectation, okay, rent's going to increase, but we're going to get a win and things of that nature. It boosted the value of the property for us because now we can show that rents are higher. And for the tenants, they felt like they had a bit more stability. And what this ended up being is that first property that I had, we ended up having 2 tenants after we implemented this. One that I put into the unit I moved out of that stayed all 4 of those years until we actually sold, or really 5 years, 4.5 years until we sold that property, right? And he stayed because of that program and other things that we talked about.
No, totally. That makes 100% sense. You want to kind of keep them, and especially a good tenant is worth a lot, so you'd rather just keep them in there, 100%. So the 5th thing is letting a tenant move in without getting certified funds or without getting a full deposit. How important is getting that deposit, especially when it is a newer tenant, not someone that you've been renewing with constantly?
Huge. Huge. You got to trust but verify, right? So you've made all these calls, but you do want to make sure that you have the security deposit in hand before you let them move in. We even do this when we have midterm renters, right? When we got midterm renters, they're looking to rent for 9 months today, and they may be renting for, like we had somebody who's renting for $6,300 a month at a spot that we have in Decatur, right? And for that person, we're like, hey, this is all great, but you can't move in until you have that security deposit and it's fully cleared. And one of the key things you said is cashier's check or certified funds. Hugely important. Can't tell you how many people will try to give you a personal check, but personal checks don't clear for up to 7-10 days, and you don't know if the money was actually there, right? And so it needs to either be a cashier's check, or where the bank is backing that money, or do it online to where it's a payment that's not going to reverse and things of that nature before you allow that person to move in. And we make that clear in the rent talk agreement, right? There's going to be a lot of people who are trying to put pressure on you. And one other piece, if somebody's trying to put pressure on you, like, hey, I need to move in this weekend. I'm getting, I got to get out of this house, da, 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 da. Is there any way I can move in? I'll get it to you. That's another red flag. Like, why are you not planning a little bit further ahead that it has to happen tomorrow? We just met. You know what I mean? Like, I need that cashier check before I can trust you. And so it kind of goes from there.
100%. And actually, to segue off, what are some things that would, disqualify someone from getting their initial deposit back?
So a couple things that can keep you from getting that initial deposit back, and we have this in the lease agreement, is if you just vacate the rental, right? If you just up and leave or break the lease agreement with no notice, right? Then you're not going to get that earnest money back, that security deposit, because that's what we're going to use to cover that vacancy while we're trying to get it filled again. We even, make sure that we have this in agreement to when we're taking over properties. I can tell you that I took over a fourplex last year that had tenants in it, and we stipulated that one of them be vacated and another one was going to vacate a little bit later. So I was happy about that. But that person was a little bit wishy-washy on when they were going to vacate. And so we made it very clear, like, hey, we're looking at the lease agreement, and per lease agreement, we need a 30-day notice minimum. Otherwise, we're keeping that security deposit. And so what ended up happening is they stayed a little bit longer, which is fine. We worked it out. They paid a couple more months, and then they gave us a 30-day notice, really gave us like 60-day notice when they were going to be moving out. And so we were able to plan ahead, have crews ready to come in, do whatever turnover work we needed, and get it advertised. And that's how it should work. So that's one major way. Another way is if there's many, additional damages, and this is something we talk about in that rent talk as well. Wear and tear is going to happen on a house. Like the tenant that lived in that house for 4 years, if we need to repaint the house, it's fine. Like I understand people put hands and stuff like that. But like if the carpet is been, like cut up and there's stuff that's completely like destroyed, we let them know like, hey, granite countertops should remain granite countertops for a long time, right? We just freshly painted these walls. Unless you're like rubbing grease and things of that nature, it should be fine for at least, 3-4 years, things of that nature. And so we just make sure we talk about all that stuff up front and what they're going to get charged for if, it's broken or things of that nature. And that's kind of what you would look for.
No, 100% makes sense. So kind of the sixth one is one that kind of some people might not think is a mistake, but I kind of want you to elaborate on why it could be one. Putting the utilities in the landlord's name.
Yeah, so this one's tough. There's going to be some instances where you have to put it in your name and things of that nature. But if you're going to do that, you need to make sure that you're charging significantly more in rent, and that in certain instances that you can put a cap on it. So I'll give you a couple of times where I've done this, and one time where I've been burned and I didn't even know it. So with some of the midterm rentals that we have, one of the benefits is people know, hey, the utilities are included, right? And so when guests are like, hey, we're going to rent this place out, we usually try to average what the utilities have been over the past couple months. And then we'll put in the lease agreement that, hey, we're going to cover utilities up to X amount, right? So for example, the one I gave you that was out in Decatur, I believe we have it to where we're covering utilities up to, or no, better yet, what we have is them paying the utility fee, and then we cover anything above that. So the utility fee is $400, and we know that the average there was like $375. And so if they use a bit more, it's fine because we're still saving on that piece. They've got some money, so that's one way to do it. Another way to do it is to say you'll cover up to X amount, and anything above that, you're going to bill back to the tenant. But the main strain, and the reason they have this on this list that you pulled, is because tenants that aren't paying that utility tend to not care, right? So, hey, let me just leave this water running. Doesn't matter. There's a leak. Let me just leave it. It's the winter time. So I got the heat on, but I feel a little bit hot in my room. Let me just raise the window as opposed to cutting the heat off. And now you're just burning through potential cash that you were supposed to receive. And so the other piece that I want to tell you about. So this is one thing that happened to me in Kentucky, right? And this wasn't even one that I had the utilities in my name. It was in the tenant's name, but I had this overall landlord policy, which essentially means like when a tenant moves out, it reverts to your name for the utilities moving forward so that you can get it rented by somebody else, right? Nobody wants to see a house that has no electricity, right? When you're trying to do that. And so we did this on this 12-unit property. And at some point along the way, I switched property management. And like right around that time, a tenant moved out. And so it reverted to my name. The tenant didn't pay their last bill, which was like $25. I have no idea, right? I've got all my stuff on auto pay, got the property management handling it. And the electric company was sending all these notices to the former property management company, and they didn't realize, hey, you got to send it to the new guys, and the old property management company was according it. So long story short, it ended up hitting my credit, and I didn't know until I applied for a house. I was actually buying the house I'm sitting in right now, and they're like, yeah, man, your credit actually went from like the 700s to like 650 or something in like a week. I was like, what? So it was the loan officer that let me know, yeah, you've got this utility bill on there. I had to fight tooth and nail during due diligence and all this stuff to get it off. Thankfully, they were able to remove it and boost my credit back to normal.
Okay.
But I would not have known if I wasn't buying real estate, right? Not enough.
Yeah. Wow. Well, there you go. That's the reason.
Yeah.
So number 8 is crucially important. And it's something we talk about here a lot. We talk about it constantly. It feels like weekly, not raising rents on a regular yearly basis.
Have to, right? Like, even if you have the best tenant in the world, the way I look at it is the cost of moving, right? If somebody's paying $1,000 a month in rent and they're considering moving to another apartment, right? If you raise rent, the cost, if you raise that rent by 3%, something just respectful, like not crazy, right? 3%, that equates to like $30, right? That's not a crazy amount. It would cost way more than that to pick up your stuff and move. But if you don't do that, then you miss out on the compounding effects of 3% over time, and you miss out on the value that's going to add to your property. And so we have those conversations up front, like, hey, we're going to raise rent in 1 year X%, right, to keep up with inflation and things of that nature. And it's adding to the value of your property, and it's also making it be able to cover more of the expenses that may come in with that property. And so I see a lot of people that don't raise the rents, and then down the road, now you're kind of stuck between a rock and a hard place because you're not at market rents. If you try to raise the rent now, your tenant's going to be like, hey, you haven't raised it in years. I'm leaving, because now you got to jump it up from 1,000 to 1,500 with one jump, which makes no sense. You've got to be able to stair step it each year. And even with the new tenants that we have, I try to build that piece in. For example, at the Snellville property, initially each person was paying about $1,500 per month, but the median rent in the area is $2,000 or $2,100 per month. And so it'd be a major jump to say, hey, I'm going to raise you $600 or $500. So what we're doing is just stair stepping it, right? This first year, I think we raised it about 100 to 150 each, something of that nature. And then next year we'll do the same, and then do the same until we get to that level. But I'm a huge proponent that you should be increasing each year, because every year your costs are increasing. Insurance hasn't gone down, right? Taxes haven't gone down. The only thing that's remained stagnant is the mortgage, thankfully. But you want to be able to get some of that benefit over time and be able to make your property more desirable for when you want to resell it.
No, 100%. 100%. So number 10 is letting a tenant get behind in rent and not starting the eviction process immediately. And kind of twofold question, how do you know, and how, I guess, do you personally determine when is okay, they're going to get me back next month, or they missed a month immediately, let's go ahead and get this thing started?
Yeah. And this is huge, right? It's almost like having a kid that you tell them, hey, you can't have a cookie before dinner, but then every so often you're giving them a cookie before dinner, right? You've got to set your standard and stick to it. And this is the importance of having it laid out, a game plan, and also having kind of that rent talk with the tenants ahead of time, so nobody's feelings are hurt, and we all know exactly what's in this lease agreement, and they know what's coming, right? And so I believe you should give it immediately, right? Whatever that time period for them to pay, that's the time period. And if they're late, you've got to serve that notice so that you can actually start the process. I'll give you another example of kind of what happened when I was initially the person doing this. I didn't actually know how to do it. Back in Louisville, right? One of the tenants that I inherited stopped paying, or not even stopped paying. They just paid super late, right? They paid crazy late. And then eventually they did stop paying. But I was just hounding and pounding or hounding, like, hey, I need the rent, sending messages, sending emails, knocking on the door, things of that nature. And he would eventually pay, after a couple attempts, maybe 2 weeks late. And then, there was a time where he didn't pay, and it was for a significant amount of time. And I had to figure out, how do I do this eviction process, right? And so I tried to send him a certified letter. And I messed something of that nature up to where the process didn't actually start. And I had to restart the process. Then I finally went and found professional help that did it for me. And that's what I advocate for now. But long story short, if you don't start that eviction process, the time never starts for your ability to take them to court, get a judgment, and get them out. And so now you're just wasting dollars and energy trying to get this whole thing going. And so now what I do is, in every state that I'm investing in, I have a lawyer that's an eviction lawyer. And if somebody's late or past the date that's due that we've agreed to, I will send it immediately to the eviction lawyer. Yes, I have to pay them a fee. Usually it's like something like, $300 or so, something like that nature. And they will get that letter out to the tenant and then start working on the process of eviction. And it's a lot smoother that way. Typically, when the tenant gets a letter, they're going to start paying on time. If it was a one-time thing or an accident, and they'll know that you're serious and like, hey, you're taking this as a business. Or in the back end, if they really aren't going to pay, at least you're able to get that process started, get the judgment, and then you have that security deposit where it can actually make up for that month that you've missed, as opposed to now you've missed 2 months and security deposit is just a Band-Aid because now you got to come in here and figure it out.
Understood. So it really is important to get it started, just because then that starts the clock on everything else, kind of the whole process. And the earlier you get that started, smoother, and earlier you can get everything else done.
Exactly. It's similar to a bank, right? If you miss your payment on a mortgage, the bank is not going to, say, hey, it's all good. Just give me back next month. They're going to send something immediately because it's a business. And they understand that if they don't send this notice immediately, they can't take it to foreclosure. The market could change and they may not be able to get the value they need for this house. And so they send it immediately. You should send it immediately.
100%. So moving on to number 10, doing repair work that's just good enough to get by instead of spending a little more and doing it right.
Man, this can cost you a lot of money over time. So early on, I used to always think, okay, let me send somebody out to repair something. Just send somebody out to repair this, repair that. And there's a couple things that I no longer repair, right? When I look at toilets, unless it's like a fill valve, right? If there's something else wrong with the toilet, you can send people out, and minimum, you're going to get charged, $45 to $75 for them to come out. And then maybe another, $20 to $30 in materials to fix that toilet. And then it can break down again the next week, and you got to send somebody out. And now you spent $200 in a blink when it only costs $250 to replace the whole toilet. And you don't have to worry about anything. So if somebody's like, hey, there's a toilet issue, like whatever, if it's not the most basic thing, and I don't have somebody already going there, we're going to replace that toilet, right? Because then I know it's brand new and we're good. Same thing with appliance repairs. I can't tell you how much I've spent on, repairing washers, dryers, dishwashers and things of that nature. And so now we have a standard practice. Hey, we're going to send somebody out to try and repair or take a look or assess it one time. And if they can't figure it out, or they're like, hey, we got to send it back in, you just need to replace it with a warranty, right? Mm-hmm. And so I think especially when you're looking to like rehab a property and things of that nature, I just gave you the appliance piece. But when you're looking at the materials to put into a rehab of a property, the major cost is going to be on the labor. Materials is not a crazy update on cost, and it's worth taking it to that next level if it's going to be tenant proof. For example, right? You could put the regular like rollout lighting, right? But then that's not scratch proof. It's going to look bad over some time. Or you can put carpet. Like carpet's really cheap, right? To put in and things of that nature. But is it going to stand the test of time with a bunch of tenants? I much rather would go in with luxury vinyl plank where it's waterproof, scratch proof. It's going to look the same 10 years from now. And then when you look at countertops, a lot of people will throw in some laminate and things of that nature. I'm like, hey, let's rip the Band-Aid off. Let's put in that granite. It's going to look, or quartz. It's going to look amazing for many years to come. And now we've essentially taken our rental to the next level. And we know that this is not going to get damaged.
Yeah, exactly. And I think that's the piece that people don't really think about is as you do work and update, your value is going up and you can charge a little bit more on the rental side.
100% agree.
Yeah. So number 11, it's kind of piggybacking off the earlier point that we were talking about, ignoring a problem tenant, hoping the problem will go away. It doesn't most of the time. It a lot of times will get worse, as you pointed out. And kind of, you mentioned that you no longer do it in-house yourself. What are some kind of tips you have for people on handling kind of the ugly conversation with tenants? I know you mentioned the kind of presentation, but kind of once it gets to that point, what do we say then?
You've built up to it. If you've been following along and you're doing the presentation and doing the screening, you should eliminate 90% or more of those problem tenants. But if you do still end up getting one or inheriting one when you buy a property, you just got to be firm yet respectful, right? You've got to lay out your business practices, but you've got to be spot on with those. And I literally just went through this last year for the first time in a while because the ones in Georgia I still manage. And so that one fourplex that we had, there was multiple tenants there. So I was like, all right, I need to make sure that we switch these guys over. So one of the first things we did is the tenants were paying via check and they were doing maintenance requests by like texting the owner. And we stopped all of that. It was like, hey guys, I have this one pager, right? Introduction. Hey, this is, new owners, da, 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 da. This is where you're going to go to pay rent. This is where you're going to go to send maintenance requests. I had like a little video in there and things of that nature. So a little bit of planning ahead can save you a lot of heartache on the back end. But if you do run into that problem tenant, you've got to have your process in place and remain firm. Once they understand that, hey, there's, a new sheriff in town, it's either going to be one of two things. Either going to be excited because you're more able to handle stuff quickly and you have a process actually in place, or two, it's going to push them out quicker, which is good. So you can get a good tenant in there. And I can tell you that putting these systems in place helps eliminate a lot of headache on your end because you're not trying to make it up along the way. You're like, hey, this is just the system that we follow.
100%, 100%. So moving on to number 12, paying a repair person before the job is done.
Yeah. So this is a huge no-no, right? Especially for a repair. You should understand the cost, right? That they're going to charge, hopefully up front. And don't pay them until the work is complete and they've sent you some evidence, whether it's a video, a picture, things of that nature, and then you pay them, right? Because if you send that payment ahead of time, where is the incentive for them to actually get it done and fit? So yeah, I would not do that.
What then do you say of the people who say, hey, give me half up front and then half when the job is done? Is that something that is kind of fair where you're not giving them all the money up front at least, but kind of saying, hey, here's the labor part. I'll give you the rest after the fact.
So with some of the maintenance repair stuff, it should be small enough that they're not usually going to ask that. If they do, you just push back heavy, right? And try to find somebody else that can do it without asking for that up front. If it's something like a major rehab or update, they're going to need some funds up front. But you want to, similar to what we were talking about before, put together a contract and an agreement where it's fully spelled out and everybody can agree to it before you get started on that project. And I'm typically in favor of giving about 25% up front and then having different milestones, right, for getting X percent. And I typically try to hold back a minimum of 30%. I'm typically trying to hold back like 50%, but a minimum of about 30% for the back end when it's fully complete and we can have our punch list to knock out any punch list items. So there's a nice juicy carrot at the end, because you'll find if you pay all those funds, before the work's been finished, or say the work's been finished, but there's a punch list
slow down
minimal items, it's not going to get done. It'll take like 2 months. If the whole work took 1 month, that punch list of 5 items is going to take 2 months to get complete because there's no urgency there.
Yeah, 100%. You need to give that incentive at the end to kind of get them moving in a timely manner a lot of times.
Yes.
Number 13, failing to inspect a unit or apartment during the year. And this is, I know that we love the long-term rents because you can kind of set it and forget it. But, it is very important to get in there. How often should you be doing an inspection on your units?
Yeah. And so this is one where ideally, right, especially if you have a brand new tenant, you want to check in about the 3 month mark, and then you want to check in about the 9 month mark, right? To make sure, like, hey, at 3 months, you should get a feel for, okay, are these guys beating up the property? How's it doing? Is it okay? At the 9 month mark, depending on if that tenant's going to leave or not, you should be able to get like a high level punch list together. Now it's tougher than it sounds to actually put this into practice, but minimum once per year. And, if you can't do those twice per year, maybe you come at the mid-year point, you want to send somebody in there, maybe to do a filter change or whatever, but really to get eyes on the property to make sure that everything is as it should be. And that there's not some deferred maintenance that's just tearing the property up. Because, especially if you're the one paying like the water bill or things of that nature, you can have a tenant that has a leak underneath the sink, and it's just eating away at the bottom of the sink, and now it's falling through the ceiling, and they're just like, hey, we're good. It's not bothering us. But for you, it's going to be a major issue down the road.
Yeah, I 100% agree with you on that end. It's very important to go and do that inspection, especially if you can, like you mentioned, the 3 month and versus 9 month, because at least then you kind of gauge on, hey, am I going to resign? Do I have to start looking again? Kind of helps you start the marketing early. Moving on to number 14, giving back the deposit before the inspection is complete.
Yes. So in the lease agreements, we have standard, hey, you're going to get your deposit within 30 days after you vacate the unit and things of that nature. The reason for that is you don't know, like we do our inspection right after, but we want to make sure, even as we're kind of tightening the place up, that everything still works, and you may not get that in the first pass. So you don't want to put the pressure of you returning that deposit like immediately, or, hey, I'm just going to walk through with the tenant and then hand them a check that day. You want to have it in your lease agreement that you have 30 days to return that deposit and just get a forwarding address. And the reason for that is if you find something crazy, if you find out that, hey, the toilet doesn't work because somebody flushed a bone down there or something of that nature, you're going to want to have that security deposit back so that you can deduct from that piece. And so we tell tenants, hey, 30 days, typically we're able to do it within a week, right? We'll send our guys out there, hey, check all the systems, get it ready for the next tenant. If there's anything that's outrageous, we may charge something to that previous tenant, and then send them the security deposit.
Got you. So kind of moving on to the next one, I'm going to combine the next couple of points here, and that's kind of trying to do everything yourself, whether that be going through that eviction by yourself or trying to do some of the little repairs by yourself and not hiring it out to a handyman. How difficult is it to run the show by yourself versus building that team out? And when should you kind of start building out that team?
I love this question. And I think it's a feel thing, right? It definitely depends on your availability and your personality and things of that nature. But if your goal is to grow big and your goal is to build out a portfolio over time that's going to pay you, you have to get comfortable with leveraging. You have to get comfortable with pushing some of these things out and not trying to control everything. With your first property, you can absolutely, especially if it's nearby, you can absolutely do everything, right? You can, just so you can know, okay, what's the cost? What's the time that it takes to do this? But little by little, you should start to outsource items that are lower cost and time consuming. For example, one of the first things that I outsourced was landscaping, cutting the grass, right? Back in Louisville, it was $30 for somebody to cut the grass, or I could go buy a whole lawnmower, have gas on the house, spend my Saturdays cutting the grass every other weekend. I was like, you know what? I think I can hire this out for $30.
We can afford the $30.
We can afford that piece. And if we can't, I need to figure out.
That's a problem. Yeah.
Right.
Yeah.
I gotta go from there. And so it's one where it's definitely going to stunt your growth if you're the one doing everything. And you want to outsource the lower dollar items first and then move to the bigger ticket items like property management. For example, I managed all the properties myself just using software and knowing the vendors and things of that nature in Louisville until we got to 15 units. I had 3 units when I actually lived there, so I had eyes on it. And I built up to 15 while I lived in Boston, and I was thousands of miles away, and I was still doing it. And I realized very quickly that I did not want to buy any more units. My realtors were sending me deals. I was like, listen, I'm good right now because I'm still trying to figure out how to get Section 8 set up over here so I can get the payments for the units we just closed on. I need to get this notice to all the tenants so that they know how to pay through our system. All this stuff was going on. I was like, and I still got a full-time job, right? So
it's a lot going on.
I'm sure. It was a lot going on. And so long story short, it was at that time that I knew, hey, I'm tapped out and I'm not going to be able to continue growing this thing if I don't start to bring on help. It's going to hurt initially because you got to get to scale before you're able to really afford all this stuff. But you can't afford not to start pushing that onto other individuals that are, hopefully better than you're going to be at this if you want to continue to grow. Same thing happened here, right? With the short-term rentals, it was a little bit different. I was managing about 4 or 5 solo. And then, I started to look at my routine and my habits. I'm like, dude, it's like 9, 10 p.m. and I'm focused on trying to message and things of that nature. I'm like, yeah, this is not going to work out, especially if we want to continue to grow and build this thing out. And so we built a team, right? And we just added on that team little by little. And now we manage 26 properties, right? And I rarely do anything. I'm just doing some high-level meetings and things of that nature, which I enjoy. And so, and I'm working to like continue growing that. And so, long story short, right? I would say just outsource little by little as much as you can. If your goal is to continue to grow, if you just want to keep a small portfolio, you're happy where you are and you can manage it, keep all the profits. But if you want to grow bigger, outsourcing is huge.
Got you. Next point, number 18, not computerizing or having digital copies of all your records.
Yes. So this was one where initially I was like, hey, I'm not going to pay for a property management software, right? That lasted about a week. And I was like, you know what? I need to figure all this out.
Yeah.
Because if they're texting me and emailing me, I'm going to miss something or it's just not going to get done. And so very quickly I signed up for something called Billion, which I use today for long-term rentals. And it's just good having a software that's online where tenants are able to pay their rent and you can keep track of that. It's not just, you trying to do this, where you can keep the lease agreements, you can keep all the conversations. That was a major piece too. When you talk about doing like evictions and things of that nature, or, potential lawsuits coming up at some point and things of that nature, you want to have a repository of all the communication that you've had so that you're on the same page and you can refer back to it. And or if a tenant's like, hey, you didn't say that, you want to be able to look back through it and not try to find, okay, was it a text? Was it an email? You want to know it's all in one system, if at all possible. And so digitizing all your items makes a lot of sense. And it allows you to be able to pass that on or teach somebody else how to use the system down the road. Another example I can give is when it comes to the short-term rental management, which is a little bit different, but we've put all of our systems into the software Hospitable, right? And we've added in all these different metrics and kind of how we message and all these different templates and things of that nature so that we can teach it to some of the VAs that we hire now to kind of give that around the clock coverage. And so if we didn't have that system, if it was still all manual, like, hey, there's no real rhyme or reason why we do something, you would still have to step in every other day to try to, help that. Whereas if you put it down on paper, if you build out the system, if you record some Loom videos to show people how you work, now you can leverage that off in the future.
Understood. And finally, lastly, but certainly not least, I think this is arguably one of the most important things we talk about kind of when we're talking in private and also while we're here a lot is kind of getting too friendly with residents and contractors to the point that you're making business decisions based upon your emotions. And I know we talk about constantly how you got to separate yourself and not become emotionally involved in a lot of this.
Yeah. And it's tough, right? Because if you're doing a lot of business together, it's going to become friends, things of that nature, but you do need to have a line, right? And that line has to be, when it's the business piece, you've got to focus on, hey, what are the results that we're getting? And one of the things I can give you, right? I have, and we'll talk about the short-term rental stuff. So we got like a bunch of cleaners and things of that nature that are awesome and very important to the business. And we've gone through a couple, right, to find the ones that we're locked in solid to. And some of those individuals we still connect with. Like, we're still on calls and like, hey, yo, how's it going? And working alongside them, but we don't use them in the business anymore because, hey, you had 3 strikes within, a 2-month period where we had reviews and we needed to move on, right? And that's separating business from the friendship piece. And you've got to settle that stuff up front. So for example, with contractors, right? One of the things that we do is we make sure that we have it either in an email or in a document, exactly what the payout is and exactly what we're looking for, and try to put pictures and examples and things of that nature. So if it's not this, then, we make the agreement the bad guy. Hey, this is what we agreed to. Listen, I understand you got to pay all these guys, and I'm with you. Like, this is a grind. You need to pay these guys like yesterday, and I want to get you that payment. If you can knock this out as we agreed to, like the Pearly agreement right here, you finish all these punch list items and things of that nature, I will personally be there to hand you that check, right? Same day. I just need you to knock these out, right? Now you're making the agreement the bad guy, as opposed to if it's just verbal, like, oh yeah, he's going to take care of me and things of that nature. It can go bad quickly. Another example I'll give you, and this is something that we put into a couple contracts, not all of them, but overwhelming majority, is we put timelines, right? And what I'll typically do is I'll ask the contractor, like, hey, how long would it take you to complete this? And at the front, everybody was optimistic. Hey, 6 weeks, it'll be done. Okay, perfect. I'm going to give you 8 weeks, right? And there's a penalty if we go past the 8 weeks. If you put this in the agreement. So past the 8 weeks is starting to hurt our business. And so it's $100 per day off that final payment, right? And so what that helps to do is to focus everybody in, and it allows them to make an easy decision, right? Hey, I've got all these other jobs that I need to do, but this one has a penalty in it. If I go past X amount of time, and I told him I could do it in 6 weeks, let me go focus over here in these last 2 weeks before the penalty kicks in and get his job done so I can get paid, right? It's not, it's not that I don't like you as a friend, but we do have an agreement, and I make sure that we put all that stuff up front so we're on the same page.
No, 100% key. I think it's very important just to communicate up front, hey, everything, because a lot of the times I feel like a lot of the issues are bred from a lack of communication. So I feel like you as well would rather over communicate, over exemplify everything necessary. That way, everything is out in the open in terms of expectations.
Yes. And Liban, this is one of the things I love about you, because similar to me, you're like, hey, I'd rather have the tough conversation up front, and on the back end have everybody like, hey, what's going on? And read things of that nature. I'm like, nah, let's go rip the Band-Aid off now. Yeah. Worst case scenarios, hey, this is, how it would work. And then it usually works out better than that.
No, 100%. 100%. But with that kind of wraps up all of the points. I think this has been a good conversation for everyone. I think we hit most of the things. I can't really think of any extra points that need to be added that weren't really covered. I think it was pretty comprehensive.
Agreed. I see we had a lot in the chat. Sorry, guys, we did not leave a lot of time for actual open discussion today, but I think this is pretty cool. And in the chat, just making sure we hit everything. Yeah. So AJ said he had a prospective tenant give their daughter's name for the background check. This happens more often than you think. Literally, you've got to call these references. So I've called a couple references, and they had no idea. Like, they didn't coach the reference up, and I'm like, hey, is this da-da-da-da-da? Like, no, who's that? I'm like, what? So you got to call. Don't just think because they filled it out that's real.
They also were asking what a holding deposit and if it's different from a security deposit.
Yes. And Justin's answer is spot on. We actually have this even in the self-storage piece where you can reserve a spot, right, to have the option to go and buy it. So long story short, holding deposit is saying, hey, I'm going to give, it's less than a security deposit, and it may even count towards a security deposit, but hey, I'll give you $500, right, I see your property is available right now, but I'm not moving here until May 1st, right? So I'm going to give you a $500 holding deposit. It's non-refundable to hold it for me to May 1st. For me to execute all the documents, things of that nature. So it's kind of like reserving your spot on that property if it's one that you really liked. So that's one piece. And then security deposit is, again, what is helping make sure that they don't damage the property, and that they don't just cut the lease and leave because they want to get their security deposit back. Okay. Liban, anything else top of mind?
No, I think we've covered everything I had top of mind. You've answered all the questions I had, so yeah.
All right, man. Well, hey, we're going to figure out this internet thing one day. All right, one day I figure
it out. I promise. See, it comes and goes in waves. You saw it was rocky in the beginning, but we settled in. In.
I don't know. Even right now, the pixelation is crazy. But listen, it's all good, right? We're going to figure that thing out. Don't worry, guys. At some point this year, Liban's going to have good internet. All right?
Hopefully one day. One day. I'm still negotiating with mysteries.
All right, y'all. Hey, be safe, and we'll catch you next week. Thank you for joining.